Welcome to another episode of Telegeography Explains the Internet, the show that explores the business behind all of the ways humans stay connected around the world. I'm your host, Greg Bryan, and today my guest is Jeremy Villalobos. He's the COO of GoldConnect, which, as you will hear in a few moments, is officially now known as Orchest, and you're going to hear the meaning behind that name. So Jeremy joined me to discuss carrier service automation and not only define exactly what that is and explain how it's being used in telecom, but also make the case for why it's crucial that carriers move toward automation for the future of networking. So we had a great conversation about what automation really means and looks like for carriers as they implement it, and what that means for their customers, how it can lower the friction and transaction costs of deploying networks and telecom services, how it will facilitate development within and between regions around the world that haven't historically been that well connected. And finally, we get into a little bit of how blockchain plays a role in all of this for enhancing the trust in transactions and contracts. So whether you work at a telco or involved in any other segment within the ICT sector, I think you'll find this to be a useful conversation about how the business is inevitably going to change over the next few years. So with that, let's get to the interview. All right, so welcome to the show, Jeremy.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here with you. Good
Yeah,
talking.
absolutely. I'm excited for this. It kind of grew out of a conversation that we had over drinks at a conference a few weeks ago, and that is the best kind of podcast that sort of comes or out of what you were just talking about organically, right? So,
Yeah, definitely.
and before we get started, there's just one thing I have to ask you, which is that as someone who kind of speaks Spanish, it struck me that your surname is Village of Wolves. Is that right? So,
Yeah, Wolfville. But
all
yes,
right,
Villalobos.
that's kind of a really cool last name, I have to say. So.
Yeah. It's very cool. And
That's how you get to be the COO when you come from the Village of Wolves, right? So,
it's a cool last name. I used to joke in college. Back in the day, in saying that in Venezuela we used to move around in boats and all that, and
yeah,
the kids used to believe me, and it was funny.
yeah, that's awesome. All right, so why don't you start out by just telling us a little bit about your background and your company. Now you have a name change to announce, so we can
Yes.
get to that here as well, right? So,
Sure. So I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Orchest Technology, formerly known as GoldConnect. So we are excited to be. We actually announced it on November 29th,
mhm.
and it was part of our transformation strategy. Now that we're embracing so much automation and different technologies, we wanted a change in our name that truly represent who we are, what we're doing, and basically it comes from orchestration to orchestrate
Mm,
services.
mhm.
So when we found the name, we thought it was the perfect name, and it's basically exactly what we do. We orchestrate network solutions for our clients.
Mhm.
It couldn't be better.
Yeah, well, I'll say it's not very often where the name of the company of my guest is the topic that we're talking about that day. So that's pretty cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So on that, that's exactly what we wanted to talk about was automation for carriers, what that means, kind of get into how to achieve it,
Mhm.
what it can mean for carriers, for customers. Um, Specifically, though, your carrier operates in the Latin American region mostly, right?
Yes, that's correct. Latin America, the
Yeah.
Caribbean, from Mexico all the way down to Chile and Argentina.
hmm And one of the things we had talked about before was that historically the story about Latin America has always been carriers getting together in like Napa, the Americas, and Miami, rather than in points in Latin America. And you were interested in leaving that whole story behind because automation and orchestration can really solve a lot of those problems in an even much more simple way than the sort of traditional carriers getting together in local data centers and whatnot. So that's what we're going to focus on is carrier automation, orchestration of services. But I want to start by sort of backing up and making sure that everybody in the audience understands that this is telegeography explains the internet after all, and we have listeners from across the spectrum of the telecom business, and so not everyone's involved in organizations like MEF and whatnot. So let's start obviously with just automation. So automation gets thrown around in the IT world a lot, and it can mean a lot of different things. In the carrier world, what do you mean by automation?
Yeah, automation is definitely making more noise lately, and I'm so excited that that's happening. Because it's a business practice that we need very much in our industry. I will define automation as the adoption, the use, or the creation of technology that allows you to streamline your business processes from
Hmm.
within your organization.
Hmm.
Technologies that can help you be more efficient, leaner, and at the end of the day, provide a much better experience to your clients. So at the end of the day, it's about streamlining your business processes. You know,
Absolutely. Yeah.
before the systems, they were created to enforce humans to follow a process.
Hmm.
Approvals. And then it basically canalized people to follow a process. Today,
Hmm.
technology can do much more than that. And allow people to focus on what they need to concentrate on, the business aspect, and then the technology can do the actual process for the human interaction.
Right. So getting rid of picking up the phone call, opening a ticket, or worse, there's still some folks out there that okay, fax me the change form and and we'll process that and all that. Right. So.
Yeah, believe it or not, you still hear facts. I was talking
Hmm.
to a partner yesterday, and he was telling me that sometimes he needs to mail the order, and I was
Hmm.
I was mind blowing. That
Yeah.
hearing
I mean,
those
we're
things.
in the telecom business, right? So,
Yeah, yeah, it's
yeah.
it's alarming, but it's good to talk about it, because it's a
Hmm.
reality that we need to change. One perfect
Hmm.
example is the sales process.
Hmm.
When a client asks for a proposal, sales put it on a CRM. That CRM goes to a sales engineer. That sales engineer does a feasibility analysis whether or not they can offer an internet or a connectivity solution on that particular building. Then once the sales engineer says, okay, yes, we can, it goes to a price specialist that
Right.
analyze the whole pricing on that area and sends back the proposal to the sales, so sales can send it to the client, and all that process can take weeks, sometimes months.
Weeks. Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
that's a perfect example. So the
Hmm.
old system, the CRM, it makes sure that every key people in the process is approving and giving the green light within the,
Hmm.
the system. So it's not like we don't use system. Yes, we do, but they were created to create bottlenecks through the process.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
that's a good example.
So jumping onto that example, it's if you look into this, listeners, right, you'll often run into some terms like OSS, BSS, like how carriers do
Mhm.
business. Could you just explain for those who maybe don't work in carriers that are listening what OSS, BSS is and how they might be automated?
Yeah, basically OSS is operating support systems and BSS is business support system. So
Hmm.
depending on where you use them within your organization, they land on one of each of the sides.
Hmm.
Those obviously are very important within the automation, because automation also is about having system interacting with each other. So
Right.
that's where the APIs come to play. The
Hmm.
API is basically what it makes the systems to communicate between each other, and then you have an ecosystem of systems interacting with each other in harmony. That's
Hmm.
basically the final goal, to have all your
Right.
systems interacting. properly and in the benefit of the business instead of holding the business back.
Right, and that's a great point. That to bring it to the greater telecom business rather than within a single carrier. Everyone's probably familiar with the sort of co-opetition model that, carriers, of course, all have a limited reach, and they all have to work with each other to serve their customers. So this the goal here, right, is to automate these processes not just within your carrier but across the industry as a whole.
Exactly. That's a great point because you have multiple ecosystem. You have one within your house, within your organization, that obviously have to be working perfectly in perfect harmony. And then it comes the other side of the business, which is the interaction that you have in, at least in the wholesale business. In the wholesale business,
Hmm.
we all carriers, we buy and we sell from each other, and we exchange a lot of data. Not only on
Hmm.
commercial but also on operations, multiple phases of the business, we interact with each other. So that's another critical aspect of automation, because if we all embrace automation, we're treating and creating valuable data. At the end of the day,
Right.
automation is about treating data. You want to have
Hmm.
reliable data that I can use within my organization to make business and solid decisions, but also I can give peace of mind to my partners that I'm giving them reliable data about my business so they can take the business decision on their end when they're using my business. We
Hmm.
complement each other's network. No one has the perfect network. So at the end of the
Right.
day, we have to work with each other. And that's where automation comes to play. It's about creating reliable data that we can use, and at the end of the day, support our clients in perfect fashion.
Hmm.
So, at least in Latin America, the problem that we're having is that the automation adoption is very, very small. I will say
Hmm.
98% of the carriers, they're not embracing automation or API. And if they do embrace API, they don't have systems in the back to have reliable data. Because it
Hmm.
doesn't
Hmm.
work if you have an API, but you don't have something in the back creating and administrating the data that you actually are passing through the API.
Right. Just
So
because you're exchanging information with the API, you have to have the information set up and automated in the back end first, right? So.
exactly. So, for example, the example that I use on the feasibility analysis, to do a quote, something that can take a month. If you have an algorithm or a system that is able to perform the feasibility analysis, because at the end of the day, it's data. You have the network data information. You have the
Hmm.
buildings where your network goes through. There are multiple data that is available to the carriers, that if you add a little bit of technology that we have available today, like big data, artificial intelligence, you can create your own coding and your own algorithm to help your business achieve better results and find and
Hmm.
work with the actual data that we already have. We don't have to
Right.
create new data. There is data already in the systems. It's just about taking those different data and put them to work together so you can provide actual reliable data and streamlining that business process. So on our
Hmm.
end, we do the feasibility analysis through an algorithm. So
Right.
when my carrier does an API call to me for a specific location, my system is evaluating the network and then sends back the information to my carrier. My carrier
Hmm.
knows what system I'm using here, and they know that I'm treating the data, so they're getting reliable information. And it's about confidence. You're supporting quickly your clients, and things that were taking months before, now we're doing in hours, to
Hmm.
exaggerate, to say that it's taking longer, but it's in reality you can do it in minutes, because it's
Right.
about
Right.
system interacting with each other. It's
Hmm.
beautiful. It's
No,
beautiful what is happening with automation.
it is. I think it's really interesting. If I put on my economist hat for a minute, right? There's sort of like two different things, it seems to me, that you're getting at. There's one. There's just reducing friction, right? So it makes it a much less. It's a almost a frictionless transaction where, again, like you would have used to pick up the phone or fax an order sheet, and that goes through multiple people, and that all just happens through AI essentially now, and
Mhm.
communication through APIs. So there's not even the need to have people communicating with each other. But then there's also like lowering the transaction costs, I assume, right? So that it costs
Yeah.
money to have these people taking weeks to look at their price sheets and their building lists, and that all happens now in an instant with software that's already been written, and so you're lowering the cost of that transaction as well, right?
That's a great point, Greg, because there is a misconception that automation is looking to replace humans.
Hmm.
That's not the end goal. Automation won't never replace humans, because at the end of the day, automation, what it does is, first, it makes efficient the interaction between organizations, through systems, and at the end of the
Right.
day, the people can concentrate on their actual role. you know
Hmm.
why
Hmm.
do I have sales engineers doing feasibility analysis on buildings? That's not the
Right.
job of a sales engineer. Yeah, of course, it's an
Hmm.
engineer, an aspect, but that sales engineer should be supporting sales with new projects, evaluating new opportunities,
Right.
new topology requirements, things that actually a sales engineer can be productive on. These guys are spending 48% of their time doing feasibility analysis. That should be
Hmm.
done by a system automatically. And that sales engineer should be focusing on his actual productive role to the organization. And the same thing with the
Right.
sales. Sales are spending 48, 49% of their time introducing opportunities in a system. That's an administrative task.
Hmm. Hmm.
48%. They should be selling. They should be meeting with clients. They should be taking calls. They should be building solutions. It's about efficiency. It's not only about the money that you save, streamlining your processes and making it shorter, but also you're having a much efficient organization, 100% focused on what they need to be working on.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I like the way that you put it there, in that thinking, like, yes, it's lowering your costs, but it's also freeing you for the opportunity to get more business. Like, I'll put it this way: it is certainly the case that we at Telegeography look at demand from various sources. We look at what multinational corporations are doing with their bandwidth needs. We look at international IP traffic and how demand growth is on those kind of links, and it's always very strong, right? So
Yeah.
people only ever need more bandwidth, when you're doing things like we're doing, right? Like and that shift that we all went through with COVID, where we went away from scheduling conference calls. I'm old enough to remember having a desk phone with and having to figure out which buttons to push to do a conference call. No one would do that anymore. What do you do now? You have Zoom or Teams or whatever. Everything is going that way increasingly, including data exchange and cloud computing.
Mhm.
The demand is always there. The question is, are you using your resources to uh, make these connections, or are you using your resources to meet those ever increasing demands out there for bandwidth? And it certainly sounds like automation is helping you get more internet and telecom to more customers, rather than taking up your resources time with just facilitating that, which could be done by an automation, right, basically,
Yeah,
right? So
100%. It's about increasing productivity.
mhm.
Any CIO, any CTO that is not embracing automation in the telecom world um, are going to face real issues in the future.
Mhm.
I always say this. It's amazing how you can buy so many things through the internet, but the actual internet, you're not allowed to
That's
buy it on the
yeah.
internet.
Yeah,
That's
no, that's
amazing.
I mean that's a really really interesting point, because and I'll tell you, from I talk to a lot of end users, and that is certainly, they can envision this and they know that they want that, and there are especially alternative kind of providers, like if you get into network as a service and those kinds of things, that have started to do that, and that's what they want. They want to be able to go to the app store or a portal or whatever and spin up whatever service they want. And especially, and this is a part people don't talk about that often, but not necessarily go through this like huge contractual sort of negotiation. There are some services where that is the only thing that makes sense, like your whole
Mhm.
big win, and it's like it's a capex expense of millions of dollars sometimes. But
Yeah.
sometimes you just need something done, and you have you can put it on your corporate card because it's a short term thing or whatever. And I think they expect that since they can do that with procurement of all kinds of services, like software has now been that way for a long time, right? That they expect that they should be able to do that with network, and it seems like it's finally catching up to that, I think, right?
Yeah, I'm excited to hear, network as a service, even though it has some misconception behind, because
Hmm.
it's being compared with cloud computing, because cloud
Right.
computing came with the e-commerce, where you can actually buy a virtual server, you select all the computing specs that you need, and in a matter of minutes, you have a server up and running.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that was like a game changer,
Right.
when for the tech world, and then telecom, gets compared a lot with that because it's connectivity. Yeah, you can do that on a data center to data center way, but when you
Right,
are
because
dealing with
there's
the last
so much
mile,
capacity already deployed between
exactly.
those data centers.
No,
Right.
you already have systems on the data center, so it's very easy to turn up. But what about
Hmm.
when you're talking about the last mile?
Right.
The last mile is another thing, because there is always another building to lit. There is
Hmm.
always another building to put fiber on. So
Right.
there is always different components that limited the has a service or on
Hmm.
demand, because when you
Yeah.
have to install a last mile, unfortunately you cannot do it in a matter of minutes. Between data centers, yes, and there are plenty
Hmm.
of companies doing an amazing job on that on that aspect, and I'm excited to see that because we're pushing the envelope to be more efficient and better. But when you see the number of carriers that are remaining on the old model, it's a big number,
Hmm.
and but last year, I will say last year and a half, many carriers are putting their eye on automation and how they can, automate a big portion of their business, because always everything facing the client, on the last mile, you need some analysis and that
Right.
still a system can do, but it's
Well,
a step.
sometimes you have to dig a hole, right? We can't automate digging a trench and laying fiber in it, right? So
Exactly. No, no, no. Of course not. But
yeah.
it is a process. It
Hmm.
can be overwhelmed for some companies. Because you're talking about legacy systems.
Hmm.
30-year-old systems. All servers. An entire data center dedicated to a telco operation.
Hmm.
For me, it's easy to talk about that because I'm a small company compared with thousands of employee companies.
Right.
But I cannot. It's not fair to judge. The big carriers. Because it is a very difficult task to evolve. They've been working on it, but it is a
Hmm.
transformation that needs to happen very soon.
Right.
Because the market is asking for, and it's just it's not sustainable in time. The business
Hmm.
practices of today, when you keep doing the old thing, it's not sustainable. You fall back and you're left behind.
No, I think that's a great point, and certainly, obviously, that's why in a lot of these services in telecom, it's certainly not just layers one, two, and three, but things like SD WAN or whatever. A lot of times came out of startups because it was easier for the startup to really dive in and figure the technology out. But in this case, certainly the technology. Correct me if I'm wrong, but really has been developed for a
Mhm.
while. It's more an issue of getting the carriers together on the same page to sort of roll all of this out in a way that works with each other.
Yeah, 100%. And I believe a lot of the carriers have been doing a great job rolling out innovative solutions. SD-WAN, and now you're seeing SASE,
Hmm.
So many different offering that are very disruptive and innovative for the clients. But then when you look to the inside of the house, we keep doing the things the old way. So yes,
Right.
the
Right.
telco world is doing a great job rolling out innovative solutions, but we have to worry about the inside of our house. Just
Hmm.
like the enterprises are embracing innovative solutions, we have to also embrace, the latest technologies. There's so many different technologies that can help a telco be more efficient and transform their own business, which at the end of the day, you're going to be able to support better those innovative solutions that you're rolling out.
Hmm.
It doesn't make sense to roll out these innovative solutions if you're taking months to install them. you know
Right.
and that's because your old legacy systems and your business processes are holding you back, your organization. So it is a process. It's happening slow, but I believe the next couple of years is gonna speed up much faster, the
Hmm.
transformation. It's exciting time what we're going through right now, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so I mentioned that this podcast grew out of a conversation we had. I don't think I mentioned that it was at a MEF conference specifically, but I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about your involvement in MEF and sort of how this relates to what they're working on, and this is the place to maybe pitch anybody who's not involved on why they should be, right? So.
100%. No, it's a unique community. I actually got together with the guys from MEF at the beginning of the year. I had the impression, that MEF was, the whole certification of the Ethernet solutions,
Hmm.
the old
Hmm.
MEF. And I got to
Right.
meet the new MEF. The new MEF is a whole different story from the past. These guys have incubation groups. They have working groups, working on the future of standardization, APIs, the future of SASE, SD-WAN, all the different innovative initiative happening in the market. These guys are working on how we can be better, to support better the clients, how we can use standardization, for the APIs. So I was very excited to hear everything that they were doing, because it was very much aligned to our business strategy. Everything that
Hmm.
we were working on, they were working on. So for us, it was a no-brainer to join MEF and be part of the community. At the end of the day, it's a very concise community where we all know what everybody's doing. If I want to do something, I look for a MEF member that probably knows what I want to accomplish. I meet with that
Hmm.
company. So it's a very close, very concise community working to push forward our industry. So I decided to also get involved even further. I became a co-chair in the LSO committee, and basically in there we work on the API standardization. How do
Hmm.
we want the language to be standardized for carriers to communicate with each other? Because an important aspect of the API development, it can take a month to develop an API between two carriers, because the
Right.
API is the way two systems communicate with each other. So they need to talk the same language, they need to use the
Hmm.
same words, they need to
Hmm.
define the services equally. So when you have different language between the two systems from the carriers, it can take a lot of time to find a common language. So
Hmm.
MEF, what they do is they standardize an API format, which if carrier A has MEF LSO Sonata, and I have also MEF LSO Sonata, we're talking the same language already by
Right.
default. So I can
Hmm.
talk to you, you're a MEF member, you have Sonata API, so I know that I can enable an API with you in a matter of a couple of days. It's just getting together and just getting the system to talk to each other. So
Hmm.
that's very important. It's incredibly important, the role of MEF that it plays on all these automation movement that is happening, because they're making sure that we are all on the same page, talking to each other using the same language. And at the end of the day, they're making it easy, the interaction between companies. So
Hmm.
any company that is not a MEF member, uh, and they should be joining MEF. One, because if you're not embracing automation, that's a perfect platform to understand the where your company can be embracing automation. Not only automation, so many different things that you can evaluate within MEF.
Right. Things that you
And
mentioned, like, like SD-WAN standards and
exactly,
SASE standards and
exactly.
things like that, that also highly in demand from the enterprise side, right? Yeah. So.
Exactly. So it is the perfect community to guide you and make the best business decision to canalize your strategy to embrace automation.
Hmm.
I understand it's not something that you can do in a matter of a couple of months and then you're an automated company. No, but it's a process that MEF can guide you and help you make the right
Hmm.
calls. And in that community, you have the different players that can enable you and help you achieve those transformation decisions. So it is an amazing community. It's an amazing group of people and professionals. They meet once a quarter in different places around the world, and those quarterly meetings are just amazing. The level of knowledge and interaction and working sessions that you can get from those meetings is just amazing. It's
Hmm.
not a capacity event. It's not like a networking event. It is networking, but it's more about
Sure.
working together between the different companies. You can have in one
Right.
room a guy from a different company, and you have 10 different companies working about standardization of API. That's amazing.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
beautiful. We
Right.
all coming together for a common purpose. That's amazing. So that's MEF.
Yeah, no, that's a great description. And yeah, I mean, sort of capacity conferences, for example, serve a great purpose, but it's usually a sales or purchasing purpose, right? It's like doing the wholesale transactions. This is about facilitating all of that. And really, if I understand everything you're saying and what's going on at MEF well enough, it's that you need to do this in order to meet the needs of your customers ultimately, because you'll lose business if your provisioning time is 90 days and somebody else's is 2, right? So like ultimately that's what it's all about, right? So specifically in the Latin American region, you said, kind of one of the issues is that most carriers there haven't gone very far down the automation road. But how do you see it solving some of the issues with networks in Latin America, and how might that sort of relate to other regions of the world as well?
So that's a great question. Different part of the world, we see the network differently. We analyze the network differently, and you have
Hmm.
different uh, type of infrastructure. I will say Europe and the US, they're more advanced in terms of visibility of where the network is and the different accesses. So probably the
Hmm.
last mile to the buildings is not a big obstacle, I will say, like it could be in Latin America. In Latin America, you
Hmm.
have so many different countries, different economies, different currencies, different political
Right.
situations, different infrastructure usage. You can have, a country, with very reliable fiber optic infrastructure, and right next to it, you can have, for example, Brazil. Brazil,
Hmm.
we can say that Brazil is very robust in terms of fiber deployment, but right next to Brazil, you have Guyana, which
Hmm.
you have to. It's not the same infrastructure. I'm not saying that Brazil is much better than Guyana.
Right.
It's more advanced in terms of infrastructure, but the fluctuation of available technology between country by country, it is like very significant.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
very different. So the way you analyze and find a solution for our clients, it may take more time in Latin America because of those aspects.
Hmm.
You got different challenges, you got different obstacles, and that's where automation can fix a lot of that. Because a lot of that manual work that used to be done in Latin America, you can use automation to facilitate those processes and take Latin
Hmm.
America to the European and the American level. Where it's not. I wouldn't say that they're fully automated, because I see a lot of the
I
Europeans
was going to
working
say
on.
it's certainly not the case that everybody knows every lit building in the U.S. or Western Europe still too. But
Exactly.
I point well taken, certainly. Yeah. Yeah.
But at least getting them to the next level, and
Hmm.
then get them, even higher altogether. So that's
Right.
one of my goals, also involved with MEF. there is very small participation from Latin American carriers in the MEF
Hmm.
community. So along with MEF, we set the goal to bring more carriers into the community. And
Hmm.
that's something more for the region. Because at the end of the day, I could be selfish and say, oh no, I just want to be the only one from Latin America in MEF. Because I'm gonna be taking
Right.
care of everyone
No.
else.
It.
but
Hmm.
but that's a selfish decision. It's a selfish way to see it. At the end of the day, we want more Latin American players to be part of MEF and
Right.
help the industry forward and get them to the same
Hmm.
level. So automation in Europe is not the same as in Latin America. So it's important that Latin American requirements and way to communicate are considered when creating API standards,
Right.
just like you're considering Asia standards.
Hmm.
It's just different way of doing things, and it's important to elevate the way we're doing things in Latin America.
I think you brought up another interesting point there that like you could see this as okay, well, adopting these technologies, working on sort of something like creating APIs that make it easy to facilitate NNIs and cross network traffic and whatnot could be seen as a competitive advantage for you, but really in the end it's a bigger competitive advantage for you if you are able to get your customers all of the network they need as quickly as possible, and that requires those other carriers to have participated, right? Because again, no one can serve any customers every single sort of office or location or whatever the case may be. So in the end, it's not selfish in a way to want the industry to move in this direction,
Mhm,
because it's the way that they can best serve their customers sometimes on your network, and you can best
mhm.
serve your customers sometimes on their network, right? So it's really kind of helpful for everyone if they participate, right? So
100%.
yeah.
On our end, what we needed to do to automate the entire region, we needed to make the decision of, okay, I don't have reliable data on my backyard. I need to do something about it. We started talking to our partners and say, let's sign a strict NDAs. Give me your network data, give me your KMC files, give me your building list, and let me
Hmm.
automate that in my platform. We have done, more than 157 carriers where we took that network data information and we put it in the platform. But that's a provisional solution to the problem,
Hmm.
because at the end of the day, that's not sustainable in time. I keep adding more carriers, and that means that I need to, in 6 months, refresh all that data. How long can
Exactly.
I
That's
keep up
that.
that?
Yeah.
So that's a quick solution for the short term, but the perfect solution is for all those carriers to embrace automation, automate your network
Hmm.
infrastructure, know what you have on the network, so I can pull that data in real time from you and then pass it over to my client. So that's
Right.
the final goal, to everyone be have an automated network, and we can
Hmm.
exchange data in real time. and,
Right.
and, and the level of efficiency and the customer support and the experience on the customer side is going to be just another level. That's the
Hmm.
final goal.
Hmm. It's so when you say that's the final goal, I'm going to ask you to speculate a little bit and
Mhm.
just say how far are we from that final goal? Are we talking 5 years, maybe, given what you've seen, that we could have that sort of like end? Or is this more of a decade long project? What can we look for in that sense?
Well, you got different ways to see that. Either one, we wait for everyone to embrace automation, or either two, we find a way where we don't have to wait for everyone to embrace
So
automation.
there could even be sort of, I don't know, the sort of actual technology of it, but kind of like crawling onto networks and that sort of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
So we have been working with multiple carriers on different initiatives around blockchain. Blockchain can be
Hmm.
a big player on that future interaction between carriers, because blockchain facilitate not only the interaction of data but actually the verification of the data. Blockchain
Hmm.
takes you to another level, higher than the actual automation. Because you can set rules, you can set agreements between the parties involved on the blockchain. And there's so many things that you can that have perfect synergy to what we do in the telco business, that
Hmm.
blockchain is going to play a key role. We're working on multiple initiatives. In MEF, we have what is called the ITN. It is an integrated ITN, integrated trusted network. And it's basically,
Mm-hmm.
we have 22 node operators. It is an actual blockchain network up and running already. But the
Hmm.
beauty of that network is that it's not only telecommunication providers. You got insurance company, you got car
Mm-hmm.
manufacturers, and the purpose of that network, the number one goal is identity verification. So
Right.
that's going to play an important role in IoT.
Hmm.
Because car manufacturers, they want to verify the identity of that particular SIM that is on that car. So, and then out of that network, we are creating an arm, which is the Televerse, that is going to be on the telco world, where we can exchange and analyze information.
Right.
When you become part of the network, you make public your NNIs and with whom you have those NNIs. And then
Hmm.
everyone can do the same. So the network can create a solution in real time without interaction of the system, just the smart system doing the whole thing, creating a solution. That's something that I will say in the next 4 years, maybe.
Hmm.
I think we are early stage. We're gonna be rolling out in Q1 a testing period of the Televerse. Between three players, three different
Hmm.
networks. We're gonna get together on the Televerse network, and we're gonna start trying out how it works. I don't
So
wanna.
it's basically an automation of the trust in the contractual process. Essentially, is that
That's
a
correct.
fair way to put it?
That's
Gotcha.
correct. So it is an interesting project. Anything that is about the future, we want to be part of it. Not all of
Hmm.
the initiatives are gonna work, but they're gonna build a foundation of what the future is gonna
Hmm.
be. If we don't
Right.
try, if we don't you know get in the room, experience how it works, so that doesn't work. Okay, this is working amazing. So then you start shaping around, what could be the future. But definitely
Hmm.
I see blockchain being a big part of it. Obviously automation is going to remain a main pillar. And I believe in the future, all the networks are going to be interacting with each other naturally, in one single atmosphere, if I can say. That's where I visualize the future.
Well, the televerse, I think gets it at that pretty well, and the upshot for the customer, whether it's a CDN or another telecom or an enterprise or whatever, is that ability to just get what you need, more or less. I mean,
Exactly.
with very little friction, right? Obviously, again, we come back to that hard truth that the last mile is always going to be dependent on what wires are in the ground, or although there's some promise that 5G might even facilitate a little bit of automation on that end as well. But leaving that part aside, it's like the goal is that you have a portal, your single pane of glass that everyone always talks about or whatever, where I can sort of provision these services, understand how well they're working and all of that, without sort of all of the steps and friction that exists now, essentially.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think we're going through exciting times. I believe a new generation is being born,
Hmm.
and also very important players are being part of that new generation. There are some players that they're gonna remain on every generation because they're able to evolve in time. But I
Right.
believe there is a new generation of carriers,
Hmm.
where we are very much aligned with each other. We don't see each other as competition. On the
Right.
contrary, we identify each other and we try to work as much as possible with each other, because together we can do much more.
Hmm.
We're partnering with DC Connect, which is a company out of Singapore. They automated Asia, the European region. We're gonna be APIing through Sonata. We're gonna enable the Sonata API between our platforms, and once that API is enabled, my world in Latin America is going to have a view into that world. And that world
Right.
in Asia and Europe is going to have a direct view into our world in Latin America.
Hmm.
So imagine if we start adding
Yeah.
different worlds into a massive, combination of different systems. Imagine what we can accomplish. So,
Yeah.
it's exciting. It's exciting what's happening.
It and to get a little sort of philosophical in a sense here, but it's that has always been the promise of the internet, in that the network where we are now could facilitate other innovations, business, technology, etc., that wouldn't have been able to happen without, as you say, those worlds sort of coming into contact. That, in a sense, the original structure of the internet. I always have my submarine cable map behind me, right? But those submarine cables, of course, always followed what were the old shipping routes, and those shipping routes were based on certain country relationships and economic relationships, and there is the promise sort of going forward in the next decade or so that we really do kind of flatten a lot of that out, and maybe there's a lot of innovation to happen between, say, a company in Asia and a company in Latin America that used to
Mhm.
would have had to kind of be more mediated between the West and or just never happen at all, right? So it's not just about telecoms. I think here it's about the sort of the global economy as a whole having less friction and more ability to innovate and make new connections.
100%. And adding to that is telecom has always been the backbone of all the technologies around the world. We're talking through
Hmm.
video because of a
Right.
telecom network. You're logging into your Netflix through your mobile because of our technology. you know
Right.
the telecom world is the backbone of all the incredible technologies that today we enjoy. And
Hmm.
you know it is our fault that we have been downgraded as a commodity, because they call the telco world a commodity. Our
Right.
prices are being erosion. It's but that's because we have been behaving as a commodity. We have been behaving,
Mm-hmm.
taking all this time to, we have been focusing a lot on the infrastructure and less on the business practice, I will say.
Right. Right.
So now that we are, increasing the value of the telecom infrastructure, and we're facilitating it to all these different technologies. We're raising the value or what we can do for the different technologies, and the synergy and the easiness to do business between two different regions. Just like you said, before it would have taken so much time and a lot of integration. And today with an
Hmm.
API, it can happen very
Right.
easily.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great place to wrap it up and just say that everything that you've said has been really illuminating for me, and I think really in the end can apply to the biggest incumbent provider in the world, to a small domestic player somewhere. There's not really a scale issue here. It's that it's
Mhm.
going to facilitate everyone, from an ISP that operates in one city to the big few global carriers that operate around the world. It seems like this is a message for everyone, really.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, my final message, it is, don't be afraid to embrace automation. Take it one step at a time, one day by day.
Hmm.
Start automating a small part of your business, a very tiny portion of your business, and let that growth within your
Right.
organization. And sooner rather than later, you're going to realize that you have a big part of your business automated, and the level of efficiency is going to be uh, helping you that growth. Because you're
Hmm.
balancing your productivity is going to increase, and that's going to push that automation initiative within your organization. It's not something that needs to happen in a couple of months. It's just a process that once you start, you don't stop, because you start realizing the benefits and how it's changing drastically your business. So one day at a time, and sooner rather than later, you're going to have an automated organization.
Yeah. Excellent. That's good advice for so many things. Just take the first step, and it'll keep going from there, right? So
Yeah.
excellent. All right. Well, Jeremy, thank you so much for joining the show. This has been a great conversation. I hope we can get together at a conference again soon.
Of course, Greg. Thank you for having me. This was a very cool conversation. I hope everyone enjoys it and take some positive advice from here.
Yeah, absolutely. One just last thing. If anybody wants to keep up with you or follow what you're doing, is there a good way to do that? LinkedIn or Twitter, anything like that?
I only have LinkedIn, no Facebook,
Hmm.
no Twitter.
Well, that's
LinkedIn is
probably
the
good these days. Let's be honest.
best. 100%. So LinkedIn, and I'm pretty much active with LinkedIn.
Gotcha.
Uh, so that's the best way.
Excellent. All right. Thanks. We'll
Thank you,
see you
Greg.
soon.
Have a good one. Bye
Cheers.
bye.
Thanks for listening. Telegeography Explains the Internet comes from the experts here at Telegeography. It's edited and produced by Jane Miller, and it's hosted by me, Greg Bryan. And I also wrote that theme song you're listening to right now. To learn more about our data, jump over to telegeography.com, and we'll see you on the internet.